Hello there, my mate Vince here, and in this video today we're going to be looking at this internet radio here. So this is a John Lewis radio, cello, was quite expensive at the time. Funny enough, I looked into buying a second-hand one because this one's playing up for my dad, and a faulty one is 80 something pound, a working one is over £300 on eBay at the moment. Absolutely crazy. So I fixed this years ago in a video, and it was a nice simple one. There was just a solder joint on one of the on where the mains comes in. I think it was just past a fuse or something that wasn't soldered properly at the factory, and all I had to do was put a dot of solder on, and then it was all working fine, and it has been working fine. The network side of it played up because it normally plugs in via an Ethernet cable. But then I just went over to Wi-Fi for him. So my dad's like really bad at technology, and simple things like if he mucks up the preset on this, then he'll be lost. But he loves it because he can listen to things like Midwest Radio, which is like an Irish radio station, even though he lives in London. So it suits him. He listens to it every single night. I would say that this is the most thing that he would use technology-wise. So basically, it's been working fine on Wi-Fi until there was a storm, and basically the whole street was talking about it. The houses actually shook. There was a lightning strike, and since then my dad's internet went. And I thought, okay, well, sometimes his internet does go, but it turns out the router was fried. I got the internet work again. I had to buy a new router, and then I had to change the Wi-Fi passwords over on everything. And on this, I went to change the Wi-Fi password, and it kept boot looping. So it would come up with John Lewis, and then it would, when I was going through it, it would then just go off, and then it would come up with John Lewis again, and then it would go off, and it would do this about 5 or 6 times, and then it would die completely until I turn it off at the back and put it on again. So I brought it home. Annoyingly, it's working, but it wasn't working. First of all, I plugged it in, and then it did the same thing again. I'm wondering, is it capacitor related? Because it's making a funny noise, and also this is another victim of the lightning strike wherever that hit. Now, next door does have scaffolding up, and my dad's overhead telephone wire, because the broadband comes through the telephone, was resting on that scaffolding. I'm wondering whether the scaffolding, a big metal structure going up to the roof height, I'm wondering whether that was where the lightning hit. And because my dad's wire was resting on that, although the wires are insulated, they're only going to be insulated up to a certain amount, and maybe if you've got hundreds of thousands of volts, maybe that's enough to break through the insulation and run down there you go, it's just gone off. There you go, you see, I didn't do anything, and it's just gone off there. So obviously it's still not right. And annoyingly, it was still plugged in with the Ethernet cable, even though it was working on Wi-Fi. So because the router went, I think the surge went through the router, through the Ethernet cable, into this here. Now, it's going to be a hard one to fix, because when I turn it on, a lot of the time it does work. But it is making this weird noise. You can see now it's gone off again. So it's making this weird... Can I hear it now? No, I can't hear it now, but when it was working, it's making like a sort of noise. Right, this is it back working again. But look, listen to this noise. I'm going to put this microphone right up to the speaker. Now, maybe that's always been there, but I'm thinking maybe that's part of the problem. Okay, so I'm unplugged from the mains. Now, I seem to remember that it was quite challenging to get into, I think. But you know, it's been a while now, so I can't actually remember if I have to take the front off or not. I can see a load of screws around the back, so let's undo them. I'm thinking now that if there was a surge, it's going to be going via here. But yet it works. You think that would knock out some kind of like Ethernet type chip on the inside. I'm wondering if this is just coincidence, and because it's been used so much, I'm wondering if it's the output capacitors on the power supply, because this has an internal power supply, and maybe they're not stable enough, and that's why it's working and then it stops working. And perhaps it worked more at my house than my dad's, because the house is warmer, and maybe if the capacitors are warmer, they're going to work better. So I just want to be wary the fact that blaming everything on the lightning strike, if it could be just complete coincidence. Ooh, yes. That was easier than I remember. Okay. Now, the hot glue, was that the work of me? Probably. So this is the little power supply here. So, where's the... Oh, and this is the output here. That goes into here. I'm not going to be able to measure if that's stable or not, am I? There's a couple of little capacitors just here. You can't see them. But just, I want to be careful what I'm touching because there still might be power in here. I don't think there will be. But you see these two capacitors here? I'm wondering if I change those out because I've got a feeling they're going to be the output ones. Right, let's carefully, because I don't really want to get involved in here. Let's carefully take out this power supply. So this is going to be the mains coming in from here to here. So that's there. Let's undo that screw. Let's undo this secondary connector. So that's the low voltage going out, I think. Let's undo these screws here. I'm being careful not to touch anything because there might be voltage. This is a 400 volt cap here, so there might be voltage left in this. Okay, let's put this down safely. Now, let's just see if we've got any voltage in that big capacitor just here. So I'm on DC. Well, yeah, I've got 34 volts in it still, haven't I? Right, let's drain that. So I've got these resistors in here, so this is going to turn the voltage there just into, it's only 30 volts anyway, but it's going to turn it into heat. That's probably going to be enough. There we go. Climbing. Right, okay. Safe. So I am thinking that maybe it could be something to do with these, that they're just not stable. They're 680 microfarad, 25 volts. Have I got them? 680. That's a bit of a weird one. Oh, here's 680. I've got them. But only 16 volts. Ah, these are 25. That's annoying. Let me see if I've got them in another pack. No, these are 470 and 1000. Let's have a look at the actual voltage coming out. Maybe I can put in a lower voltage in this instance here. Right, it doesn't say here what voltage is coming out. So the fault before was, I think, one of these solder blobs here wasn't soldered properly. I think that's what the fault was at the fuse. Let's see if there's any indication on here about what voltage is going into it. I can't see anything labelled up here, but there is two massive capacitors here as well, underneath all these cables. And they're labelled up 2200 microfarad, 25 volt. Oh, that's annoying. See, it might not be that at all. I mean, I wonder, could it be where it's going into here? They seem very big capacitors there, don't they? See, this has had a lot of use, as in it'd be on for hours each night. And I don't know when I did the video, but I think I gave this to my dad before lockdown. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to unsolder them, and I'm going to check them for ESR and also capacitance. I'm just waiting for my desolder station to get up to temperature. I'm just wondering, I don't really know what voltage this runs off, do I? So, you know, I don't know, is it going to be 25 volts here, or could it be as low as like 6 volts or 12 volts or something? So why don't I get my bench power supply and just put voltage directly into here? Remember, this is what's connecting up here for the mains, but that's out of it now. So if I was just to put, for example, 12 volts into here, we could see if it's going to start working. So I start really low on 3 volts and it's not drawing anything from the bench power supply. It's not even attempting to turn on. I go up to 5 volts and it does draw on the bench power supply, but nothing comes up apart from a backlight on the screen. Then I put it up to 6 volts and it does actually go to John Lewis on the screen. That comes up, but it doesn't go any further than that. So it looks like it's partially working as low as 6 volts. If we put 16 volt capacitors in, it might well be working. Maybe the inside of this is going to be working on 12 volts, but we will discover the voltage it's working on later on in the video, hence the reason I'm whizzing through this bit now. There we go, welcome to John Lewis. And that's just at 6 volts. I wonder would I get away, then it's gone off I think. I wonder would I get away with those capacitors. Well, there's only one way to find out, Vince, and that's to pop the new ones in. So I unsolder the faulty capacitors, and then the suspected faulty capacitors, I should say, and then I pop in the correct capacitance capacitors, but the wrong voltage rating, so they're 16 volts instead of 25 volts. I don't think anything too catastrophic is going to happen. It'd be different if they were like 400 volt and I'm putting in 16 volt, but 25 volt and 16 volt, I don't know what this is going to be running at. I will show you later in the video what it's running at, but at this moment in time in the video, I don't know what it's running at. So yeah, that's what I'm doing here now. And let's test the suspected faulty capacitors to see what their capacitance is and also what their ESR rating is. First things first, let's just go to capacitance on the meter. Right, so this one should be 220 microfarad. Yeah, it's pretty much, it's 208. I think that's all right. You never know, they might have ESR, bad ESR on them. This one should be 680. Hope it's out. Oh no, 691, that's okay. I don't think it is these. No, 696. Well, unless the ESR's out, I think they're just fine. Right, what should it be? 680, 25 volts, 680. Well, I haven't got 680, I've got 470 and 1000. So 470 is 0.12 and 1000 is 0.08. So should we just take the middle off that and call it around about 0.10 as the worst case scenario? No, it's well under, isn't it? It's well under. Let's try this one. Oh, yes! Hold on, is that my dodgy leads? 1 second. Are they shorting together? Bear with me, it could be shorting together. Get my hopes up. Oh no, it's just my things were shorting together. No, that's all right. Do you know what? Now looking back at that, with the benefit of editing, I can see a different view. I see the view that you're seeing, which is straight down from the camera. Remember, I'm sat looking at a slight angle. I don't think my leads were short in there. Looking back, I'm going to show you in just a second, they both seem to be separate from each other, and I don't think they're touching the actual can of the capacitor. So I'm wondering if this capacitor here is slightly dodgy, because it was reading like 3 ohms or something, which is going to be well over. But then when I started wiggling things, it went down. So I'm wondering if now this capacitor could possibly be a bit iffy. Let me show you again. Let's try this one. Oh, yes! Hold on, is that my dodgy leads? 1 second. Are they shorting together? Bear with me, it could be shorting together. Get my hopes up. Oh no, it's just my things were shorting together. No, that's all right. Well, I'm not so sure. I mean, I think the leads were separate, but it's just that the reading was all over the place unless my meter was just not settling. It's just a bit odd that it did seem to be over a couple of ohms. So for me, I'm still not 100% sure about that capacitor. Anyway, let's test the last one. 220, 25 volt. So this should be 0.23 worst case. 0.23, 0.23. No, I think all those caps are okay. Right, I mean, it went faulty after the lightning strike, but I just can't see how. What if it was via the Ethernet cable? That's the only way. Because if it was power, surely it would have taken out loads of other things in the house. I mean, this is always plugged in, but it's turned off at the back. Well, that's the answer. If it's turned off at the back, a surge can't get past the switch, can it? Unless it was a huge surge. And if it was a huge surge, it would have blown the fuse, would it not? So unfortunately, everything kind of looks okay with this. It looks immaculate on the inside. There's no signs of water damage or anything like that. It looks brand new. But it has got a hum. So let's put it back together and carefully, without getting electrocuted, see if we can pinpoint where the hum's coming from. I can use a plastic pry tool and maybe touch different chips or capacitors and see maybe there's something vibrating, and by touching that it may get rid of the hum from the speakers. Right, I'll plug it in here first and I'm going to turn it on. So unless those new caps go bang, I think I'm going to be okay. Obviously I can't touch anything here, otherwise I will be electrocuted. Right, let's plug it in. Right, it's coming to live at the front here. I can see the John Lewis thing here. So I'm going to get some internet radio on and then start listening to it for a while, and then we might be able to hear where the hum's coming from. You know, it's not picking up the Wi-Fi from the other room. But yeah, I can hear that noise, but I don't know if that noise was always there or not. I don't want to reach in here and unplug the speakers to verify which one's making a noise. Thing is, it hasn't turned off yet. Right, network timeout. Leave it with me for a bit. I need to connect it up to my router in here, and then I need to just listen to the music for a bit and see what happens. Alright, interesting, because I don't actually think I'm going to be able to fix it in this video. It might be a revisit video. I've gone onto the network wizard, and when it started scanning for the SSIDs, as soon as it went onto the scan, the high-pitched noise has stopped. So maybe it really does have some sort of faulty network side of it, which is somehow drawing too much power and causing the actual unit to boot loop. Anyway, I'm going to connect it up and see what happens.
So we leave that, we parked.
Right, it's only a minute later and I've got Midwest Radio working in here.
Sherlock, and he says, Happy New Year to you from Sligo and all at the radio station. Thanks for all the
It still seems so weird. Reminds me of being a kid on holiday. Right, let's see if the noise is there. No, that noise has gone. What's that about? Let me just go on to CD.
It was, just wanted to say a quick note to Pauline there in Pauline.
Ah, noise is back when I'm on CD. What does that mean? Let me see if it's on anything else. Bluetooth. No, stop there. Let's go to aux in. No noise there. But earlier on I didn't have it on CD, did I? FM radio. No, nothing there. So maybe that's got nothing to do with the problem. It's just scanning for DAB now. It hasn't cut out yet though, but I have got the back off it, so maybe there's less heat being generated, or unless it is an overheating thing, or is it just warmer because I've added the heat from the soldering iron and stuff into the board.
.com. Over 18s only.
No squeal there. Music player. No squeal there. Internet radio. And no squeal there.
Popular.
So it's only CD that's squealing now.
They play it all over.
Yeah. Squeals there on CD. Interesting. Okay. Right, leave it with me for a bit. I'm just going to listen to a bit of Midwest Radio.
Irish Nights in memory of
and
very
we'll
talented
see what
Martin
happens.
Rodney.
I think what I'll probably do actually is to make it safer, I'm going to put a couple of screws in here. Right, it's been about 10 minutes and I'm just playing some Daniel O'Donnell, of course. goes with the Midwest Radio. And I've got here an app called, let me just get the name of the app, Spectroid. And the weird thing is, like when I'm talking, you can see it's going up and down here. Like, you know, if I'm clapping, you can see it's, when I'm talking, it's around this thing here. But when I put it up to here and don't speak, you can see it's always up here at, it says 3,101 hertz. But the electricity is going to be 50 hertz, isn't it? So if it was some sort of ground hum, wouldn't it be lower than that? And I think it's slightly higher on the right speaker than the left speaker. So this is the left speaker. It's very steady, isn't it? Now let's go to the right speaker. So I'm going to Google what that actually means there, and maybe it's a common thing. Right, this is really strange. So basically it's been on now for, it must have been at least 45 minutes. I listened to quite a few songs by Amy Winehouse, and I went back onto the internet radio, and it hasn't dropped out once. I Googled, let me just lower this down, I Googled this hertz here, so 3000 hertz or 3 kilohertz, and basically yes, there are people complaining of those hums on various different things like guitar amps and radio equipment and other hi-fi equipment, but there doesn't seem to be an answer such as yes, it's the diodes, or yes, it's this, or it's a ground hum. It just seems to be a hard one to trace, so I think I'm going to have to leave that up to my subscribers. Remember, I have had this apart before, so maybe I haven't put some shielding back to where it should be. Now, interestingly, the whole time it was on CD, it was making that noise, and then as soon as I went on to the internet radio, it stopped, and now there is no noise whatsoever. But if I went back onto CD, it always comes back. So if I go to source here, and if I go back to CD, instantly it will come back. There, I can hear it straight away. But sometimes when I go back to source and I go back to internet radio, it will still be there. There you go, it stopped. But other times it will stay there. So it's just a little bit odd. It's really, really odd that it happens sometimes and not other times. So maybe it's something to do with something that's switching on that source button, or whatever's responsible for that source button isn't shielded or grounded properly. Very, very odd. Probably when I was in here last time, I bet I've taken some foil away from something where it's not grounding one of the boards properly, and my dad would have just never noticed because he would have it on quite loud because he's hard of hearing. So yeah, but interestingly it hasn't dropped out at all. And since I've been to my dad's, this only lasted a couple of minutes, and then when I brought it back, I think the most I would have got out of it would have been maybe 4 or 5 minutes. So now for it to have been on, it must be 45 minutes to an hour, and it's still working fine. So yeah, for some reason it looks like those capacitors may have fixed it, even though they're testing fine. What I've done is I've ordered up the correct ones. I went for Panasonic. I ordered up 20 of them for around £6 something, and they're supposed to be low ESR. They're the 105 degree ones, so hopefully they're going to be better than the ones that are in here at the moment. Well, it is a bit of a strange one, but today this is the first time where it's just been working non-stop. Up until this time at my dad's, it was only working for about a minute. When I got it back to my house, it seemed to work for about 3 or 4 minutes and then start boot looping. So we can say it's fixed. I'm just wary about intermittent faults. If I had seen a bulge capacitor that I took out, or one with high ESR, then I would say, yippee, I fixed it. But the capacitors I took out all look to be okay. Yes, one did have slightly high ESR for a couple of seconds, but then settled right down. Realistically, it was probably something to do with my meter, or the leads touching each other, or the can of the capacitor with a bit of paint missing or something. I think that the whine is nothing at all to do with the boot looping. I think the whine may have always been there, and maybe it's been there from the very beginning, because maybe I didn't notice it before. I was just, checking to see if things were working. I probably weren't concentrating too much on the whine. It's just that the whine is quite off-putting when you hear it, but it is only happening on the CD. Sometimes it will happen on other things, but then if you switch back and back again, then it's gone. But it's always there on the CD no matter what. So I do spend a little bit longer on the whine. I'm wary about sticking my hands in this quite clearly when it's on. So what I do is I measure the voltage, and it's actually only running on 15 volts. So at least now we know it's 15 volts it runs on. So it comes in on AC mains and it gets dropped down to 15 volts DC. So what I do is I unplug the mains completely and disconnect the lead from it, and I use my bench power supply to power this. Now it's only running on 15 volts DC, I don't have to worry about my hands going in there and getting electrocuted. So I put it back onto the CD and I run it off the bench power supply, and basically I touch all the different components, hoping that when I touch something, the hum will go away, but it doesn't. So maybe this hum is being generated internally somehow. Weird thing is, it's coming from the front two speakers. It's not from the subwoofer at the bottom. It's definitely the front two speakers, but it's not the speakers, because when I swap them over and unplug them, if I unplug them both, there's no hum coming from the subwoofer. So basically it's only when I can have one speaker plugged in, the right hand one, I'll hear it. I'll unplug that one, plug in the left hand one, and I'll hear it. I can swap them over and I'll still hear it. The hum's coming from the board somewhere, but it's not from vibration. So when I touch the different coils and stuff, it doesn't change the hum. So unfortunately I can't show you what has caused the hum on the CD player. But hopefully if you read the comment section, because I appreciate that's the only really interesting part of this video, if you read the comment section, hopefully somebody else who's more intelligent than myself, which isn't too hard, will hopefully have a good educated guess as to what the problem could be. So if you're curious, have a look down at the comment section. Hopefully other people will have answered what I couldn't answer. I also tried to use the scope, because one day I would love to be able to use the scope to see something, and I think that would look great in a video. Problem is, I'm putting the scope on AC on both speaker outputs and I can't see anything. There's no spikes happening at all. And then when I put it on the other one, I can't see it either. Then I put it onto DC, just in case there's some weird DC leakage, because I don't know what DC leakage would sound like on a speaker. I don't know, would it be like clicking or something, or whether it would create like a sound like we're hearing now, a whine. I really don't know. I don't think it's ground hum, because as far as I can see, the frequency is wrong, so I don't think it's to do with some different grounds between the boards. Bottom line is, I just don't know what it is, and I can't pinpoint what the problem is. So anyway, back to why this seems to be boot looping. I think it could be something to do with the cold, because my dad's house is definitely colder than mine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to bed now because it's late, but I'm going to pick this video up tomorrow, and I'm going to leave this outside because it's winter here in the UK at the moment. And then if I bring it in from outside and it starts boot looping, we know it's related to temperature, and that might give us an idea that one of the capacitors are failing on the main board. So let's pick this video up the next day when this has been outside for many, many hours. Right, it's the next day now, or next evening. This has been outside for most of the day. It must have been out here for about 6 hours, and it is nice and cold to the touch. So this has to now be colder than it has been at my dad's house. So let's bring it in and see if it's boot looping. If it's not, it means that somehow those output capacitors that tested okay must have been at fault. And if it starts boot looping, we know it's nothing to do with those output capacitors. Right, you can see how cold it is because it's actually got condensation on the glass there. Look at that. Yeah, so that's proof that it's cold. Let's plug it in. Probably end up water damage now. Let's see if it's going to work. So turn it on. Let's see if it's going to boot loop. Connected. It's looking promising. Here we go. Amazing. Copyright. And right now I can't hear that sound, just out of curiosity, but I can't fix this one. CD. Ooh. That's interesting. Right now I can't hear the sound. How weird is that? Maybe it's somehow temperature related. Let me put it back to internet and then go back to CD again. And now back to CD. It's so bizarre. Yeah, it's not making that sound. Well, maybe the sound only occurs then when the unit warms up. So that might give you guys a clue as to what the problem could be, because I really can't work that one out. And also, I can't work out how to fault find that. So if those of you who are more experienced, which is going to be most of you, if you could let me know what you think, how you would fault find that, because I think that would be quite interesting. Right, okay, just before I end the video, I'm just going to leave this on for about maybe an hour, and then if it's still working, I think we can say it's fixed. But how bizarre is that? When the correct capacitors arrive, I'll pop them in, but I might be speaking too soon yet. Let's leave it a good while and see if it is still working. Right, well, it's been at least an hour, maybe longer now, and I had it on at my house for about half an hour, and it's been on here for about half an hour, and it's still working absolutely fine. And I've tuned in loads of other channels as well. That took us time. There we go. So, it's back in its home. Hopefully it will keep working, but I don't really know why those capacitors fixed it, because the ones we took out were testing absolutely fine. So I can't really say that it is fixed, but time will tell. My dad's going to use this a lot more than, for example, the testing that I was doing. So I'm going to know in about a week or so if it is still working. If it is, I'll change out the capacitors to the proper 25 volt ones, the Panasonic ones, rather than those cheap Amazon ones. And then hopefully it might keep on working. And then if it fails in the meantime, at least I've got more information to go forward. If any of you out there know why we had that 3000 hertz hum, the 3 kilohertz hum, then if you could let me know. I'm just going to see if I can hear it now. Let me just go to CD. No, I can't hear it at all. Isn't that really, really strange? So, yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions. Not the most interesting video in the world, but at the same time, I think the hum thing is quite interesting on how you would actually fault find that. So, yeah, that is it for this video. The end story is that somehow it's working when it wasn't before, which is always good, but it's always nice to have a full conclusive answer rather than just guesswork. Hopefully on the next fix, we will have something more conclusive. Right, just a quick update at the end of this video. I can't speak about the loud whine because my dad wouldn't be able to hear that. But this is well over a week later now. It's the 14th of Jan. I think I filmed this around the 2nd, 3rd or 4th. I can't rightly remember, but it's well over a week later. He's been using it every single night and sometimes in the day, and it's been working absolutely fine. Now, the reason I jumped straight to the output capacitors is because it's not the first time it's happened. In some of the videos I've done, it's come up over and over again. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Philips air purifier. I'm thinking of Bowers & Wilkins Zeppelin speaker, Xbox One S, original Xbox. I'm sure there's going to be countless others as well. And the great thing about it is anything with an internal power supply has the potential to have the output capacitors gone. So it doesn't matter what the device is. If it's got an internal power supply, and if it's going to be a switch mode power supply one, then whether it's an expensive Bowers & Wilkins Zeppelin speaker or whether it's an old original Xbox, there's a chance that the output capacitors have gone. So it's a good thing to remember. So even if this video was a bit boring, if you remember it, then in the future you might go on to fix something else, and hopefully I will as well, because the output capacitors in this instance look like they were to blame, because I'm thinking the fault would have reared its ugly head by now because it's been in use so much, and before I changed the capacitors it was failing all the time. So I think I can safely say it is actually fixed, which is fantastic. The proper capacitors have now arrived, so I need to sort myself out and get them soldered in, but it just seems to be working fine with the capacitors in there. But obviously because they're such low voltage rating, then I suppose it's going to be very close to the mark where they're probably going to fail quite easily, so they will be changed. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all very, very soon. Take care, everyone.